Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another live episode of Jacob's Ladder. The worm has turned. I'm sure that you have heard the news that it seems that indeed there is a parasite on the loose in the brain of Robert Kennedy Jr. This made big news. And as you can see from the thumbnail there, parasites and worms are all over the place today. It's all over entertainment. Of course, Netflix just released its series based on the popular manga series Parasite about these parasitic worms that come over. It's like a body snatcher film, and they take over. Now, why is this worm thing so interesting to me? Well, because I've been talking about wormwood tea for a long time. A lot of people ask me about the wormwood tea. So today, I'm going to actually have some. I'm going to show you how I prepare it and everything else, but that's not the big part. The big part is there's a much deeper meaning to this worm. It's a popular term. The worm has turned. Symbolically, spiritually, the worm turning is something that we will see very shortly. Something that's happening, I believe, in the world. But let's start off with just the interesting news about Robert Kennedy and the fact that he's challenging presidents to now eating more mind worms himself. This was in Rolling Stone magazine. By the way, welcome everybody. I want to welcome you to the show. I'm Jacob Israel. If you're new, I take world events and I kind of just draw out a spiritual meaning. If you can hit the like button for me now, right now, that would be great. Tells the YouTube sources that are in charge that they should, recommend the video to more people, so that maybe we get more than just all subscribers that watch, and make sure that you are still subscribed. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has sold himself as the younger, healthier alternative to Biden and Trump. There's flips off of boats. He's doing all sorts of things. He had like a push-up contest where he had his shirt off and he was wearing his Levi's, which is weird, that you're wearing your jeans, but hey, whatever. He even caught a rattlesnake, right? A rattlesnake or a snake or something. And I was so impressed until I realized that the footage was backwards and that he didn't actually catch a snake. He released the snake and made it look like, which was a little snaky, a little bit snaky. But on Wednesday, the New York Times reported details of a deposition where Kennedy, who was he was going through a divorce with his second wife, he detailed a bunch of health concerns. And one of them was that he had this discoloration that was from a tumor. But Kennedy said to the doctor that it was a worm that got into his brain and ate a portion of his brain and then died. Worms don't usually eat brains, but the worms I'm going to be talking about today, I almost want to drink the tea. I haven't even made it yet. The worms I'm going to be talking about today, well, they are eating people's brains, having a problem. Having a problem with the way people think today. Today, it's very difficult to just see clearly or think straight. Seems like the whole world is against us, and perhaps it is. The truth is that worms, these parasites, because now everybody's freaking out about parasites and everything else, they don't actually eat your brain. And by the way, like every show that I do, I told people a while ago that this was going to be a thing, that worms were going to be a thing. We'll get to that. That's always fun, right? It's always fun. But they don't really eat your brain. A neurology professor at the University of California in San Francisco's Wheel Institute for Neuroscience, who specializes in infectious diseases, said that the worms typically contain themselves in these cysts that form around them. So they don't really eat your brain. But bottom line is, worms all over social media. Became like a trend, this thing with Robert Kennedy. Very interesting. Now, this is why it's interesting to me. And you know what? I want to start, before I even get into this, I want to show you what I got this at like a tea place. It's called parasite removal. Now, I'm not recommending this. I'm not exactly a doctor, okay? Not at all, clearly, right? I'm not a doctor. We've established that. So I'm not giving you any recommendation. Go do whatever you want. But it's supposed to be good. I have Crohn's disease. I went to see my Crohn's doctor yesterday. I've been having some issues. So I'm going to go in, You're going to get the old checkup, get the old colonoscopy. Those are fun. Going to get that done. But this is supposed to be used for like pinworms, roundworms, tapeworms, hookworms, any kind of parasite. And it's with black walnut. And it tastes pretty horrible. And, you know, I was hoping for like just the regular bags that I could dip in, but it becomes a little bit of a process with this. So I don't know if you can see. You probably can see inside. Doesn't look that appealing. But I take a pinch. Let's put it in the old God's Champion mug, which, by the way, you can get, if you want to support the channel, you can get just by clicking the link below. I have a link there for Teespring, which, really will lead you to everything you want if you want to get the Teach Me the Truth No Matter What the Cost shirt or anything else to support the channel. I use a little bit of local bee honey, and I throw that in there because we'll just use a little bit more than normal because it's really horrible. All of a sudden, this is like a cooking show. And then I got my hot water that I already got placed. And I'm just going to put it in there, and I'm just going to let it steep. And it looks pretty awful already because it turns like black. How's the audio, by the way? Everybody here? Everybody hit that like. Hope that you guys can hear me okay. And gals, this is this whole thing with the worms. It's going around. A lot of people talking about wormwood. Now, here's weird, right? Take a look at this. Right where the arrow is. If you look at it, on May 3rd, I said 420 days ago, I drank wormwood tea for the first time on air. And now here I am, and I'm doing it again, ironically. This was on May 3rd I wrote this. I said, I'm feeling like wormwood may become a thing. God will cause his people to drink wormwood. Maybe it will become a trend. Very strange, right? Stranger still, I did a video 1 year, 8 months, 2 weeks from that date of when we got the news that Robert Kennedy Jr.'s brain was being eaten by a worm. I did a video about this. I did a video all about the brain worms and the worms. There's a lot of worms. On this show, we've talked about the worms. There's the crimson worm, which, is a symbol of Christ sacrificing for his children. There's the Solomon's Shamir, which I'm going to get into a little bit later in the show, which is going to blow your mind, which cut the stones of the temple to make the temple. It was like a magical creature, the worm. The worm that we've been talking about on the show is, it's now mainstream news, especially the whole part of worrying that you are part of, an infected class of people that have bought into the mind virus. The mind virus, which goes by a lot of words. One of them is woke. But I do believe that there's something to this. In computers, they have a virus. It's called a worm, a computer worm. And we're all plugged in. We're all plugged in to all of our platforms. We're plugged into our phones and our laptops or whatever else. We're always... if you're online a lot like me, you're going to see a lot of this stuff, kind of manifest in the world. And it gets you to think a certain way. It gets you a little stressed. And it's just, it's just not that great when you got, algorithms basically dictating how you're going to think and how you're going to act in the future. Just not the best. But the news that RFK Jr. had found a dead worm in his head, this was back from 2012, which, by the way, was the last time I had a colonoscopy. For somebody who has Crohn's disease, you're supposed to do it all the time. I had enough in my lifetime. I started going kind of more of a natural way. Hey, before we get into this, I think the tea is steeped already. So what I got to do now, because I don't like to eat twigs and berries, is I'm going to put it in the appropriate receptacle. Some of you got that joke. And I'm just going to pour it in here and then get all the stuff out. Wait till you see the rest of this show. So much to get into. I'm spilling it literally all over my pants right now. So they won't have any worms, which is good. We don't want any worms in our pants. And I think I'm good. I think I'm good here. And in a second, you're going to see me grimace as I take the first sip. And yes, I'm going to drink the whole thing, and I'm going to drink it as we go. Why not? Better be safe than sorry. Kennedy's got one on. They squeeze it all out, and you see all the berries and twigs and walnut husks and everything right in there. And it's Yeah, it smells horrible. I've had people that said they went out and they bought it and they tried it and they said they're never going to drink it because it's so bad. It's not fun. Tastes a little better if you get the local ones from like the people that, do this. I don't know. Supposedly there's something in the process, how he makes it and how he grows things and blends things. I don't know. It's all witchcraft to me. Okay, here we go. You see I'm scared? And I feel like maybe a little more honey will make it a little bit better, but not too bad. Some people say that this actually is really good for roundworms and parasites and everything else. And I got to thinking, the scriptures say that God in the end days will cause people to drink wormwood and bitter gall, And I think to myself, well, if there was some kind of a big parasitic thing going on, that, people are going to be drinking wormwood. That's like a prophecy being fulfilled. I'm drinking wormwood right now. Isn't that right, Justice? Thank you so much for the super chat. That means a lot to me. But listen, I put this out. I had a feeling that wormwood, and worms and parasites were going to be a thing. I told you all. And then I have this clip from, let me play it really quick just to show you. And once again, I've been feeling that great. I'm a little bit under the weather. I got more. Everything is loud and clear. Let me know in the chat if not. All right, here, let's take a listen. And by the way, this was like a year, whatever. I don't know. I told you earlier. Wormwood tea. Why on earth would I be doing this to myself again? Why? I don't know. It's absolutely disgusting. But today I felt like I needed to drink it again on camera. I had Danielle and Anthony and Shiloh try this. They don't understand why I would do such a thing. I don't understand why I would do such a thing. I feel like I gotta suffer because it's like, sometimes you gotta take medicine. It's really yucky. I feel like I gotta suffer. I don't know. I feel like I gotta suffer through this one. So hope that I'm doing this, and it's not just for the parasites and everything else. If you haven't seen my last couple of shows about mind control and worm. And now I'm talking into a muted mic. What is going on? Will you all please help me? All right, let me do this again. I apologize. I'm just not feeling well. I've been under the weather, but the show must go on. All right, let's do this one more time. Round 2. I got more wormwood tea. Why on earth would I be doing this to myself again? Why? I don't know. It's absolutely disgusting. But today I felt like I needed to drink it again on camera. I had Danielle and Anthony and Shiloh try this. They don't understand why I would do such a thing. I don't understand why I would do such a thing. I feel like I gotta suffer because it's like, sometimes you gotta take medicine. It's really yucky. I feel like I gotta suffer. I don't know. I feel like I gotta suffer through this one. So I'm doing this, and it's not just for the parasites and everything else. If you haven't seen my last couple of shows about mind control and worms, like computer worms or AI coming on over and, rewriting the program of your brain. I just did a show on that, this show right over here. And it wasn't long before Elon puts out this tweet. It looks like an NPC. And, they're getting their brains reprogrammed. Little cartridge being put in their head. And it says, hate Elon Musk. Which, of course, could have a dual meaning of everybody likes to come against this guy, likes to tear him. Now, a lot of people are telling me that I'm like a fanboy or something else. I don't think people really watch the show. I'm trying to encourage people. And that goes for people like Elon, too. I want people to do the right thing in the world. The world is so crazy right now. I feel like if they don't return to God, I don't even know if these people believe in God. But if they don't, this is going to be nothing. Drinking this tea, which is the most disgusting tea I've ever had in my entire life. This is nothing compared to the Wormwood everybody's going to be drinking. You know, really, really. It's funny. If you look at that tweet, how the eyes are like, they look like they're glowing. We have all those memes going around where everybody, they start off one way and then they end up with their eyes glowing. And I think people forget that that's like Terminator eyes. That's Terminator eyes. Yeah, right there. It's spooky. The eyes, the glowing eyes, like it's a thing, like AI possessing people. Some people think the AI, that they're actually demons, right? That they're fallen angels, Nephilim, or whatever you want to call them. The mind virus. It's taken over. It probably took over my mind when I was trying to, make this all perfect. I try to make everything so perfect. I got to be honest. I had some people saying, "You're not looking too good, Jacob." I'm not feeling good. I'm really not doing great. I can be honest. Got a lot of things going on, but I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. We have these when you have autoimmune diseases, they come and they go. A lot of stress, a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff going on. I feel like right now is a very transitional period for a lot of us. So I appreciate you for sticking with me. I maybe don't have the best lighting either. I don't know. I think I look all right, but thank you for the concern. So you saw that video, right? This is nothing new. I mean, I did a video about, a bunch of people coming in, like jellyfish parasites taking over. And, it was like a thing.
Some monsters from
2019,
space.
I did little goofy tricks. And,
what if it be some tiny little invisible jellyfish aliens trying to invade? Pretended themselves to be a virus called Omicron.
That I've talked about for years.
Wait, I did like a show on that, didn't I? That's right. That's where we get the idea from, your show from 2019.
Jimmy Medina.
I don't know why you're talking about jellyfish coming from space.
So, we have a lot of weird things happening. We have a comet that literally just passed by. And we had a comet back in the day that passed by. And there was a connection to the terrible virus of the crown. Some people say that viruses are like little, they come in and they're like programs. They come in and they reprogram you. Stuff like that. Is it too far-fetched to think that there could be some kind of, we'll say viril-like worm that could come in and possess you? This is the stuff of science fiction. We also have, of course, worms that are happening in the literal, where we heard about this guy, this 52-year-old guy, the wolf over on X pointed this out to me, that, this guy was eating bacon. It needs to be cooked. Can't be having undercooked bacon. What are you doing, right? And he ended up with a parasite, almost killed him. Parasites, worms. What's going on with the worms? Why are there so many worms? So many of you here, and thank you very much, Rhonda Peterson, for the super chat. I'm the favorite meatball, of course, of a lot of the people here. And AJ, thank you very much for the super chat. And thank you all of you that are hitting the like. That's a lot less than half of you. But I know that right now you're going to be like, oh, shoot, I forgot. And you're going to hit that like, because what happens is it tells people to come on over. And this guy who was 52 in Florida, he's going to live. He's going to be okay. He was getting some migraines. He thought that it was connected to maybe his obesity or maybe his type 2 diabetes. He was finally admitted. They had a CT scan, MRI, and they found that he had tapeworms, worms, plural, in his brain. The larval, because they put eggs in you. And as I'm talking about this, I just want to drink more of this stuff. Which, by the way, you get used to it. Like, if you watch my early episodes where I had it, I showed you that video, which was probably the second time I've ever done that. It's funny how we come full circle years later and I'm drinking wormwood tea again. Almost like now maybe it'll be beneficial. And I have not seen, as some people say, I have not seen anything in my poop that looks like worms. I'm not drinking this that often, people. I just want to let you know. I'm not even recommending it. It tastes horrible. You look into these things. I was impressed a couple of years ago for whatever reason to do this. And it was a spiritual thing at the time because we were talking about, the coming days. Now here we are, and it makes sense. On Netflix, this is a series that I can't watch because I don't like reading subtitles, and I don't like the dubbed films. You got to tell me in the live chat or the comment section if you like. I don't like subtitles. I don't like dubbed films. Thank you, Erick, for the super chat, by the way. I saw that. I can see all of you. I got my other screen wide open here. But yes, this movie, the synopsis is that a mysterious group of parasitic creatures from outer space begin taking over humans. It's like, that's what I'm saying. I have, as a writer, I have so many different ideas on how this could happen. How because we heard of that worm, that ancient parasitic worm that was discovered in Antarctica, and how it's thousands of years old, and they reanimated and brought it back to life. And I'm like, oh, this thing's going to take over their brains, and then he's going to get everybody to put the worm in the brains everywhere else. Next thing you know, they're going to be in charge. And this is actually a thing. There's a whole bunch of science fiction books about these creatures called the Vril. I've covered them many times. I've talked about parasites in so many shows. Here are the ones just from the last year or so. Remember when Elon was telling everybody to resist the current thing? And I made jokes about what is that thing? Is it the current, as in the current, or the current thing? As you saw in the video that I shared, where they had the little compartment, and then they give them the Terminator eyes. Is it so hard or so far-fetched to think that we can't be lopped into it like a computer? We can't be interfaced with it? Especially since it's been today, I saw the news. It's 100 days since Neuralink's patient was playing psychic chess, where he's moving the cursor with his mind. It's been 100 days. Things are going great. Is it so far-fetched to think that it's a possibility that our biological brains could be taken over by a parasitic worm that is maybe artificial, intelligent in nature? It's a possibility, don't you think? I mean, in my mind as a writer, or or an alien group of worms, however you want to look at it. And by the way, worms, if you want to just look at it from the Wikipedia, familiar worms obviously are earthworms. Then you have railroad worms, you have wood worms, you have globe worms, you got blood worms, you got butter worms, you got inch worms, you got meal worms, you got silk worms, you got woolly bear worms, you got worms of all kinds, all shapes and sizes. But not ringworms, that's a fungus. But many people, they end up getting, parasites, parasitic worms, roundworms and tapeworms. And then they need deworm. See, now I made a joke when the virus of the crown hit that it was it could have been some kind of parasitic thing that came on a comet. This is just in my imagination, by the way. And so I made this whole little, joke up. And then I said, hey, and that's why ivermectin works. Because get it? Because it's a bunch of alien worms are taking you over, and you're getting these flu-like symptoms, as they say. But really, your body is being taken over by another creature. I'm not saying that's the case, but these are things that I've talked about. These are things that I've talked about on my shows. To the left, you can see them. I like to look at the world through the lens of imagination. I like to imagine things. I just find things a little bit more interesting when you look at them that way. Really, the worm that we're hearing about with Robert Kennedy Jr., it's just a regular tapeworm. It happens. There was a time, it was a dieting thing. People would take these. They would eat these things. And in fact, Robert Kennedy challenged the President Biden and then President Trump to a worm eating contest. That's just a little weird to me. That's just a little bit weird. I mean, is it just me, or does that seem strange? I feel like it's a little strange. I feel like it's a little strange. But once again, even Elon jumps on the brain worm bandwagon. How does one avoid brain worms? And to which I responded, wormwood tea, right? But the mind virus is real. I posted this. I said the parasite being manifested in the natural to explain the spiritual. From Elon's post back on May 25th, 2023, where he said, this is crazy. Lives are on the line. The woke mind virus is a parasite that kills its host. It must be eliminated. Wormwood tea in the natural would be supposed, if it does, I don't even know if it works on parasites. And I'm not recommending it, by the way. And I don't think everybody's walking around with a bunch of worms in them. Okay. So I'm not a wormologist, if that's a word. Do you know that phrase that I've been talking about? Thank you, Tammy Rudd, for the super chat, who says that she loves my, or he loves, Tammy could be a guy's name too, loves my podcast. Well, I appreciate it. That's great. And everybody who's watching right now, if you give it a thumbs up, if you give it a thumbs up, maybe it gives it a little boost. Something's been a little different in the realm of YouTube. But the good news is that all of you end up coming, you end up seeing it, whether it's live or later. And then I just encourage you that if you haven't seen a show in the last couple of days, go back, because I got a show. I'm doing one like every other day. Recently, I've been trying to do, one after the other. But it is what it is. Who saw Dune? Anybody see Dune? I thought that the remake for, I watched it in the theater, both ones, first one, second one with Timothy Lachey, this version. I thought it was great, and I was a big fan of the original. I'm not a big writer, reader, I should say. I'm a big writer. And but I do like watching the movies, and I love Dune. It was always one of my favorites. And I found Dune coming out the way it did, when it did, and then of course everybody talking about worm sign, which of course a worm sign would be when the worm is coming. That I'm not going to give you the ins and the outs of the movie, but once again, this being something that's in sync with everything. This thing that's being in sync with everything. At the same time, I thought that it was interesting that a couple of days ago, Pam, I appreciate that huge super chat. Thank you very much. You're number 1, 2 in my book, by the way. Jay Anderson from Project Unity, I don't know who they are, but I saw this post and it reminded me of the show that I did about Solomon Shamir. You remember correctly when the Titanic ship, the sub, went down? When it went down, it was an issue. And it looked a lot like Solomon Shamir. And we talked about the worm, and I gave you the definition and the explanation of this mysterious, mystical creature, which is a really cool story. And if you take a look at the bottom 2 shows that I did, they were, I guess about, I don't know if it was a year or so in between, but for whatever reason, I had the worm in the eye. That you see the Twitter bird that was right before it became X. And that worm was in the form of the threads, which was going to be the rival to the X. We talked back then about how these worms were infecting people. And by worms, I mean these threads, these algorithmic threads that were being fed to think a certain way, so that we act a certain way, so that we go in a certain direction and we do what, powers that be want us to do. So we talked about this. Solomon Shamir it may be like a historical thing. They don't even know if it's real. They think it's a mystical tale. Sounds mystical when I tell you about it. I'm having an issue with the lights, by the way, today, so I apologize if it's annoying you. But the Shamir, it's, as Jay puts it, is a worm that was claimed to have the power to cut through, disintegrate stone, iron, diamond, and King Solomon was the one that had control over it in place of cutting tools, because the law demanded that the temple be built without man's hands and man's tools in that area. There's a way to combat this, is that you build everything and you set it up somewhere else and then you reassemble it. But the worm was supposedly used to, cut off the hard edges, to really make things work a little bit better. Solomon Shamir, there's a picture of it right there. You can see it. And as I said, worm sign, the worm that cuts through stone to build God's temple again. Fear not, you worm Jacob, and you men of Israel. I will help you, says the Lord, your Redeemer, the Holy One. Come hell or high water. Thank you very much for your super chat. I appreciate that, Cass. Cass gave some, you want to take a look, gave some, I guess some opinions monthly. There's a protocol that you can do. That's cool. Thanks for sharing. Put that in the comments section too, so other people can see it. Let me read to you about this worm that built Solomon's temple. In the book of Kings, it contains a description of the building of the first temple, its dimensions, how it was ornamented, how the carvings on the walls, and the house, when it was in building, was built of stone, finished at the quarry, and there was neither hammer nor axe or any tool heard in the house when it was building. Now, the reason why this is significant and important for the Old Testament is to understand that we are God's temple. No, you're not. That you're the temple of God. So we're God's temple. And it can't be built. You can't do it on your own. God's going to do it, right? It has to. There's no real tools are going to be used. It's going to be the spirit of the living God is going to actually come on in and get you to wake up, bring you to where you need to be. And that's why we're supposed to present ourselves a living sacrifice, because we are meant to be, God is called the Lord of hosts. We are God's host. Not saying that God is a parasite, but there is a symbiotic relationship that takes place, which is an important one. So basically, as I was telling you earlier, they set it all up somewhere else, okay? But in regards to the Shamir, this obscure worm, which is in the Bible itself, not really in the book of Kings, but in Ezekiel 3:9, it's written that the Shamir is stronger than flint, Edwin. Thank you for the super chat, brother. Stronger than flint. I mean, that's pretty strong. Or diamond. And that the sin of Judah is written with a pen of iron, with a diamond point engraved in the tablet of their heart and on the horns of your altars. So, I mean, you get the idea that the sin is so great in the people that it's engraved with a diamond pen, so it's really, but the Shamir, on the other hand, stronger than flint. It's going to get stronger than diamond. So in other words, it's about carving the sin out of our lives. And it gets more interesting because the story I find to be I try to relate things to current events. And I find it interesting because Jacob's called a worm in Scripture. Fear not, you little worm, Jacob. Jonah had a worm. God prepared a worm to devour the gourd that was giving Jonah shelter. After the destruction was past, they all repented. God didn't wipe them out. And then Jonah was all upset. And then he was really upset because his shelter got all jacked up because a worm God prepared ahead of time ate that away. Much like the Shamir would eat away all the rough edges of the stones so that they fit together perfectly. You're starting to see what I'm getting at here. This worm that is turned is a symbol for all of us. It's a symbol for the weak man now becoming strong. This is what happens. So, in the most detailed account of the Shamir, according to the story, King Solomon asks his advisors how the stones for the temple could be prepared without the use of the axe or the chisel. They told him of this miraculous worm, the Shamir, but did not know where to find it. So the king then summoned forth spirits and demons, but these were also unable to say where it might be found. However, they did suggest that Solomon consult their lord Asmodeus, the king of the demons. Of course, I'm not calling Elon the king of the demons, but he is a very, very powerful man in charge of a very large social media platform. Demons are basically thoughts. In computer programming, a demon is like a program, a daemon. Okay, so you get what I'm saying. You get the connection here. And he also wore the Devil's Champion outfit here. I'm not calling him the King of Demons. I think that I honestly, a tree is known by his fruit from the things that I hear him saying. I feel like, because for years I've prayed that, that the Lord would work on powerful people's hearts and use them. God needs to use powerful people. I'm hoping that that's, someone like Elon. I'm hoping, but I don't know. But for the sake of this, I just wanted to point that out because it's easy to, demonize everybody, but we'll call him for sake of the argument, someone that you would go to if you needed to find the Shamir. So this guy might know the answer because he knows everything, right? So King Solomon sends his general who subdued this guy, Asmodeus, and brought him to the king's palace. Asmodeus revealed to Solomon that the Shamir was in possession of the Lord of the Sea, guarded by a certain bird, a woodcock. See how I think this is interesting? Because, of course, I think of the Twitter bird. You look up to the up right-hand corner, right? But also it calls to my memory the very wonderful story of the Binu bird in Egypt. We've talked about the King of the Sea. We've talked about, the trident quite a bit. So I find it interesting that it's like all these stories kind of come together with this story of this worm. Just blows my mind. Because when you think of a worm, you think of something that's so terrible. But is it so terrible if the worm, when it's turned, I think I have a definition of it. Let me see if I can pull it up. Give me a second here. I think I do. I may not. It really has to do with someone who is weak, basically saying, I'm not going to be taken advantage of anymore. It's like when you're being put down. I believe it comes from King Henry originally, and that even like the smallest of worms, when persecuted enough, will turn and will bite you. And so if we're hearing about worms again and again and again, and parasitic worms are all over, our media and all over our streaming and the biggest movie has to do with worms, right? Because they got he got Modib, who is the, is the lead. The guy played, Timothy Lachey plays the lead. He's Modib, the desert mouse. And they get the, I guess the urine from the worm. And if you drink it, it's like gives you a trip and it makes you, it's like probably like drinking wormwood tea, probably tastes just as bad, but enlightens them and opens their eyes to more. There's a deeper meaning to it. It probably has to do with drugs. The guy who wrote it, I think it is, connected to that. But when the worm turns, it's when you're persecuted for so long, you're no longer persecuted anymore. That's it. You wake up. The worm has turned. We can't continue to be put down. We can't continue to be hurt. We can't continue to be, treated in such a way. At some point, the worm turns. Now, you're looking at just a bunch of passages in Scripture that have the word worm in them. And I want to point, I just wanted to take a moment before I get to the big part of this. I always kind of save everything for the end. But that the worm does represent something else. And if you just look at the passages and you take a second, you could probably figure that out yourself. In the first one, we see in Deuteronomy, you will plant vineyards and you will cultivate them, but you will not drink wine or gather grapes because worms will eat them. So you see, worms can be, so you build this great life for yourself, but you won't even enjoy it because you're taken over by these parasitic worms that come to your head. You know what? I'm just going to lower the light for a sec because it's annoying me. And the best part of the show is coming, so I don't want you to miss this. I'm just going to lower the light because it's really getting annoying. I think that's better. I don't know. We're going to see. But I tell you, it's one of those days, people. It's one of those days. So you can build your life and you can think that things are all so great, but the worms, they can eat them away. Job, my body is clothed with worms and scabs. You know the story of Job, the guy, the suffering servant, who God sent and tested and tested and tested. He lost everything. Never gave up on God no matter what he endured. The worms covered his body. The worms. If I say to corruption, you're my father, and to the worm, my mother or my sister. Job 21:26, side by side they lay in the dust, and worms cover them both. Dust in Scripture, man was made out of the dust of the earth. Dust is compared to lies, imagination. Isn't that interesting? Ideas. Worms can take over your head. You can get an earworm when you're listening to something, and it just takes over. Let's just move down to Psalms. But I'm a worm and I'm not a man. Sometimes we can think that we are worms. I feel like that myself. I understand that passage, Jacob the worm. I get it. I get it. Do not be afraid, you worm Jacob. That's coincidental. Little Israel, do not fear, for I myself will help you, declares the Lord, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. The worms. The worm is about to turn. The worms in the Bible are a thing. For the moth will eat them up like a garment. The worm will devour them like wool. But my righteousness will last forever. Worm can't touch your righteousness. What's the worm there to do? If you're putting your faith in a shelter, the worm's going to eat the shelter away. If you're putting your faith in things that aren't godly, the worm's going to come and it's going to smooth out those rough edges and build that temple the way the Lord wants. Jonah 4, at dawn the next day, God provided a worm which chewed the plant so that it withered. What is it that's withering? It's the sin in your life. The fact that in the world right now, we're hearing about a dead worm in a man's brain who's a presidential candidate. I think to myself, the worm has turned. That worm is dead. And I use this as a reminder to remind you that the thoughts that are in your head, you have control over them. You don't have to listen to them. You don't have to. If they're not true, why would you want to? Any thought that brings pain or gets you to want to do something that hurts someone else, like, you get a thought in your head, it's like, oh, I'm going to show them. That's a worm. It's trying to possess you. It's trying to take you over. It's trying to steal the fruit of your labor, trying to steal your marriage and your relationships away from you. How many marriages, tell me, leave a comment, because you let the negative thinking take over and you didn't cast it aside and worked a little bit harder. Dan and I fight. We have fights. We're not perfect. She's my best friend. I love her more than anything else, and we have a great relationship. I mean, she's my best friend. I don't know what I would do without her. She's going through something she's so scared about. All of this stuff. They become worms, this panic, this fear. She's up like all night looking stuff up. Has to go to this doctor, has to go to that doctor. And it's stressful. It's no wonder I'm all flared up too. Worms getting in your head. There's so many worms that are attacking people and taking people over today that I released a video that was such a revelation and so wonderfully beautiful and poetic and true. And I already aired it like a while ago. It was from like a Christmas show. That because I titled it a certain way, was the virgin birth literal? I probably should have titled it better, because in the first minute and a half of that video, I said, I'm not discounting the literal story. It's all about what does it mean? How could I ever discount the literal story? Let me tell you something. If people want to literally believe that there was a literal worm that ate a literal temple, I'm okay with that too, because I understand the spiritual message from it. So worms, getting people up. People got upset. So weird. So what I had to do is I had to do this. Hang on. I'm going to show you. Because it says the mind virus. It is. People don't even understand where these thoughts come from in their head sometimes. All right, here, let's just play this and you'll see what I mean. Here, this is what I wrote. I said, to those, let me make sure that I transfer it over. Good. Okay, I'm back to my game again. To those who the enemy tried to scare away from my virgin birth video, missing a massive revelation, I'll give you the first minute, 38 seconds where I both tell you I'm not discounting it and then reveal a mind-blowing revelation that can change your life. Don't be meatheads, be meatballs, who now see they've been tricked and discover the treasure waiting in this video. Promise I will try to come up with better titles. That's my fault. It's my fault. I should have made it. Yeah, I try to do a little clickbaity. You've heard the story told that Mary was a virgin, and that I would like to point out a couple of things. And I'm not discounting it. 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 First of all, the word wasn't virgin. It was maiden. In the Strongs, it's a maiden who is ready to be married, has a fiance. That's what the word means, just translated as virgin, because sometimes it can also be used as someone who has not had relations. But mainly the word virgin, let me see if I can blow this up, and you'll see a maiden on the bottom by implication. Also, if you look at theirs, it says a marriageable maiden. So that's the very first definition. Then the second one would be also that. The most important one is someone who's abstained from all uncleanliness, idolatry. That's what that term really is supposed to mean. It's supposed to mean that you've become like a virgin. You've become pure. This is why they were the saints. They were all given new gowns. We're filthy rags, but then we're given this beautiful white gowns, pristine, because we've been made clean. We've been made pure. We've been made as a virgin ready on her wedding day. You've heard the story told. I understand. It's hard to be challenged, and I wasn't even trying to challenge you. Can I tell you something honestly? If I thought some people were going to have such an issue with it, I would have been a lot more clear. Here's the thing. I'm going to ask you in the live chat, and I'm going to ask you to leave me a comment. The parable of the 10 virgins. Who is that parable about? Anybody? It's about you. It's about me. It's about trimming your lamps and making sure that you got the oil. Oil is, in Scripture, it's wisdom. It's understanding. Moses, when he had understanding, his face shined. And it says when the Scriptures say, when a man shine, oil causes his man's face to shine. Wisdom causes a man's face to shine. Jesus' face shined. Wisdom, truth. So they needed oil. They needed wisdom for their lamps to shine. The foolish, they didn't bother looking into it. They saw a title a certain way, and then they didn't, because they listened to the earworm. And once again, for those of you that, got a little freaked out and went in, and then it's like if you go in with the wrong thought, listening to the right thought, it's not that easy to bring you on back. It's not that easy. I'm bringing this up because I want people to do better. Not like do better like you did something wrong. I'm going to do better. I want us all to do better. I want us all to not jump to snap decisions. You got to ask me, do I believe there was a literal virgin birth? Yes. Do I have a problem with it if there was no literal birth? No. Why? Because it's the spirit of the story that matters to me. The spirit of it. I think it's great. I mean, yeah, what better way to prove that somebody is, from God? It's a virgin birth. But then again, what better way to prove that someone is from God when they're born again? Come out of their a life of drugs and everything else, and they're a new creature, a new creation in God's image. We're supposed to become as a bride waiting. We are the bride of Christ. Mary was the bride of Christ. It's a symbol. That's all I was saying. I was trying to show you the beauty and the majesty of the whole thing. That Mary was specifically chosen and that her name was there for a reason. Joseph was specifically chosen, his name, his profession, the area where they're from, all of these things, magnificent. Joseph means God is added. Mary means man's rebellion. Jesus, Yahshua, means God is salvation. God has added to man's rebellion salvation. How? By being formed in them. This is what Paul says. I travail in birth until Christ be formed in you. But the earworms come in. What's in Lord of the Rings? You got to tell me in the comments section. The name of the guy. He was like a worm. And he polluted the king, and he made the king. The king was all, his life was terrible, and he was so miserable, and the kingdom went to ruin because he was being possessed by these lies that were, but the worm is dead now. The worm is dead now. If you're watching right now and that show troubled you, I hope that this has helped you a little bit. I hope that this has helped you a little bit. It was never meant to say it wasn't real. I believe every one of these stories is real. I believe the Ark story is real. I do. I believe it all. I don't care if it isn't. That's the difference. Why? Because my faith is unshakable. Why? Because those things happened so I'd understand the deeper, more significant spiritual meaning. Do you get my point? My life is going to be a living epistle. Your life is going to be a living epistle. Your life will help people down the road. They'll tell stories about you. Remember, Meemaw came over, she had the apple crisp, and it dropped. And everybody thought she was going to get so mad. And she went down, she grabbed it, she started eating, and other people came in. And Meemaw told us all, don't cry over apples crumble on the floor. That's a terrible example, but I believe you know what I'm saying. These stories happen so that we would understand what it means for us. It's all about us. How do I prove that? Because Jesus said it. When Mary and his brothers, his mother and his brothers showed up, he was speaking. He was at like an event, maybe like a CPAC. He wouldn't be at CPAC, by the way. That was a joke. He's probably at some event. And there were a lot of people there, and they were listening to him. They wanted to hear him. Somebody comes up to him and goes, Jesus, your mom and your brothers, they're in the back. You want me to bring them to you? Should I go get them right now? You're dealing with, so they don't have to wait. And he doesn't say, yeah, bring mom and my brother up. That's what I would say. I say, my mother's here? Of course, bring her up. I said, bring her here first. I don't know these people. That's not what Jesus said. He says, who is my mother and who is my brother but those who know me and who can hear me? And he was a representation he was the Word of God. So, who gives birth to the Word? Those that can hear the Word. Who is the mother and the brother of Christ? We are. Sister as well? We are. Do you understand? Please tell me that you understand. Please tell me that you understand. And please, in the future, pray about stuff. Stuff doesn't sit well with you. The scriptures say that when the truth is revealed, it's like an axe being laid to the roots. And it's not like pleasant. The day of the Lord, according to scripture, is a gloomy day. It's a day filled with darkness and smoke and dreariness, kind of like today. This, I believe, is the day of the Lord. This whole thing with the worm and the parasite and all this stuff, it wasn't meant to get you all freaked out thinking you got to go buy some wormwood tea or anything else. I get freaked out by this stuff. I saw one video on X of a strawberry. They cut it, put it under a microscope, and they're all a bunch of little creatures. And I didn't have strawberries for 2 weeks. That's how the mind virus gets into you. You see what I mean? See what I mean? The Shamir worm, getting us. It's like, why does the Lord allow lies? Why did he create the waster to destroy? The father of all lies was a murderer from the beginning. The adversary. Why is there an adversary in our life? Why do we have negative thoughts coming into our brain? I believe it is so that we can recognize the truth of who we were made to be, in the image of Christ being formed in us. Where, as I pointed out in the video, the Holy Spirit overshadows us as the Holy Spirit overshadowed Mary. And what that means is that in the Holy Spirit is truth, love, hope, patience, kindness, justice, mercy, endurance, all these things. When that overshadows you, that's when the truth of God, that's when the Christ in you is revealed for the whole world to see. I was like really excited to share the video. I never thought for a minute that it was too advanced for some people, but now I realize I made the mistake. So I apologize to you for trying to be clickbaity. Now, I'm going to be better, but this is also a joke I'm setting up. So I changed also because the thumbnail, by the way, the thumbnail had like the Terminator on it, right? And it had like the Emperor. It was a weird thumbnail. It was weird and it like was freaky. It's like, why am I thinking anybody would go into this video and not think this is heresy? So I understand, and I'm not holding it against any of you. I'm hoping that, since I've given you my explanation, how you're okay with it. But then I thought, I can't do that. So I got to make it I got to be a little better. So let me just show you how I changed. So you know that I'm on the right track and that I'm going to be better. I'll just pull it up and let's take a look here. And you'll see I changed it to a UFO over Mary and the baby. I mean, because I don't want anybody to click on it just because it looks interesting or anything. Yeah, that's not any better, right? That's not any better. Is that it's not any better. Hey, listen, I am a meatball who is drinking wormwood out of Uranus, all right? Is a planet. I mean, let me be a little goofy sometimes. Let me have a little bit of fun. You got to remember when I'm creating these thumbnails and everything else, I'm trying to create these like little movies because our life is like a movie. My goodness gracious. People are talking about parasitic worms that are eating people's brains. And I've been talking about parasitic worms eating people's brains and saying it was going to be a thing. So much as just like 4 days before Kennedy's announcement, I said, I think it's going to be a thing again. I don't know why. I'm just putting it out there. And then here it is. Maybe it's because we need to stop listening to that negative thought in our mind. Maybe it's time we do as Christ said to do. This is a great lesson. Take your thoughts captive. Test the spirits to see if they be of God. How does one test the spirits? All one has to do is, and what is a spirit? Jesus said, my words are spirit and they are truth. So your words are spoken thought. So spirit is thought. Test the spirits to see if they be of God. God is love. God is mercy. God is truth. Any thought that's not rooted in love, is probably not God. So take captive your thoughts. And if you got a bunch of negative thoughts, the way you change this house, the way you get rid of this house is you gotta bind it. You gotta find it, bind it, and kick it out. This is a process. You got to learn to listen to what thought to listen to and what thought not to. I've been doing this a long time. I'm pretty good at it, but man, do I have so much more to go because it's sneaky. The devil is a liar. Sometimes he comes to you as an angel of light. I explained to a couple of people. I don't think they're big time followers of the channel. They just, for whatever reason, found me on X and wanted to chime in. And I explained, hey, look, I'm not discounting it. And then I made a video to make it very clear. And then I showed everybody, look, I'm not discounting it. I'm trying to show you something more. If you watch the whole video, if you haven't seen the video because you saw the weird thumbnail and you saw the title and you thought it was going to be something, now you should go watch it and enjoy it. Maybe go see it with new eyes, and you're going to probably end up with tears streaming down your face because it's that beautiful. God, the Lord God and his love for us, it's that beautiful. It's that beautiful. It's that beautiful. But, as the story goes, there's no room for them at the end. Why? Because you got so many worms, so many mind worms coming on in. And it's time for us to kind of move past all of that and let the Lord do what the Lord does. Let this stuff, worm its way out of us. Have some spiritual wormwood tea. Pray about things. Think before you speak. Think before you speak. Take your thoughts captive and discard the ones that aren't true and loving and encouraging. It'll save you a lot of fights at the house. It'll save you a lot of fights in general. It'll save you a lot of pain, a lot of heartache. Somebody comes up behind you, honks the horn because you didn't, hit the green button, because the green light happened and you didn't hit that pedal fast enough, and they're gonna honk the horn behind you. Then you look up and you look in the rear view and you see that lady is so angry. She's like, and you could tell that she's like saying, "You effing," and all you did was you just, it just for a second you missed that green light. Instead of being like letting that dictate how you're going to handle it, right? Let it go. Forgive her. Move on. Because the other way to handle things, you think of that thought, I'm going to drive slow. Now, let's see how she handles that. That was the first thought that came to mind when this happened. I'm going to drive slow now. We'll see what happens. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I took the captive that thought, and I said, it's not of God, because that'll get you into trouble. Why instigate? Why let things get worse? If you have an opportunity to make peace, please make peace. I hope that this video on the worms was fun. I hope so. And I hope that you share it around and tell your friends. And if you want to get the truly free home product, the toxic free, somebody sent me a really cool video. They got their box. He was doing laundry for me. I'm going to probably roll it into another show. But if you go to trulyfreehome.com, all you have to do, there's a link in the description, by the way, or just type in trulyfreehome.com and then type in code Jacob. Anything you order, you're going to get 30% off. It's all toxic free and everything else. And, today we should be worried about these things. I got to go. I love you all. I hope that this was a good show. I really am telling you, I'm putting my best foot forward. I have been not well. So everybody pray for me. I'm on the mend. I'm going to be feeling better soon. This is just a process. Right now, it's a process. And that's it. So pray for me, pray for Danielle, pray for everybody's health. And leave a comment, share it around. Have the best day ever. I love you all. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.